You never forget the moment your child's laughter turns into a scream. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind of day parents dream of. Blue skies, a gentle breeze, the sound of children playing in the park blending with the smell of grilled hot dogs from the food stand nearby. My daughter, Emma, 8 years old and full of boundless energy, was darting between the swings and the jungle gym with her best friend Lily. Their giggles carried across the park like music, the kind that makes you close your eyes and smile. Just grateful for the moment, I sat on the bench not far away, sipping from my thermos, eyes following Emma the way a mother's eyes always do, never letting her out of sight, even for a second. That's when it happened. At first, I heard a sharp bark of a boy's voice, loud, entitled, the kind of tone you don't expect on a playground filled with young children. I turned just in time to see Emma slow down as she rounded the slide, confusion flashing across her little face. Then came the shove. Hard, deliberate, violent. Emma's head snapped back before her small body crumpled to the ground. The sound of her skull hitting the concrete sent a chill racing through me. My heart stopped. For one unbearable moment, the world went silent. Then, as if in slow motion, I saw her tiny hand twitch against the ground. Emma! My voice tore out of me as I ran, my legs barely feeling the earth beneath them. By the time I reached her side, she was groaning, her eyelids fluttering, her small lips trembling. I pulled her into my arms, panic clawing at my chest. My little girl's face was pale, her forehead already swelling. I brushed the dirt from her cheek with shaking fingers, fighting the terror rising in my throat. And then I heard it. She was in my way. The voice was sharp, casual, completely devoid of remorse. I looked up and saw him. A boy, maybe 10 years old, stood with his hands on his hips, chest puffed out like he owned the entire playground. His brown hair was slicked back, his shirt crisp and expensive looking, his sneakers so clean they almost gleamed. And on his wrist, a watch, a real one, not a toy, something no child that age should be flaunting. He stared down at Emma as though she was nothing but an obstacle, like she was a piece of trash cluttering his perfect playground. His lips curled into the faintest smirk. I was stunned into silence. My hands clutched Emma tighter against me as my heart thundered in rage and disbelief. Did you push her? I demanded, my voice trembling. The boy tilted his head, eyes narrowing with that kind of arrogance only a spoiled child could master. She didn't move when I told her to. So I moved her. Those words. Cold, calculated, cruel. Before I could respond, another voice cut through the air. A woman, sharper, louder, dripping with superiority. Jacob. What is going on? I turned to see her. Tall, immaculately dressed in designer clothes, blonde hair perfectly styled, sunglasses perched high on her head. Even from a distance, I could feel the storm of her presence. This wasn't just any mother. This was a Karen. She marched across the playground like she owned it, every step exuding entitlement. Parents scattered, moving out of her path, their eyes dropping to the ground as if they dared not be noticed. And then her eyes landed on me, on Emma in my arms, and on her son standing smugly beside us. What are you doing to my son? She snapped, her voice carrying like a whip. For a second, I couldn't even process her words. Her son? The boy who had just smashed my daughter's head into the ground was her son? And she was looking at me as if I was the villain here? I rose slowly, still cradling Emma, my glare locked on the boy. Your son shoved my daughter's head into the concrete. She could be seriously hurt, but instead of shock or concern, the woman's lips twisted into a sneer. Oh, please. She's fine. Kids play rough. Don't exaggerate. My jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might shatter. Around us, other parents were watching, whispers rippling through the crowd, but no one dared speak up. It was as if this woman commanded some unspoken authority. She is not fine. I spat. She hit her head. She needs to see a doctor. And your son? My son. She interrupted, her voice cutting like glass. Isn't the problem here? Maybe if you actually taught your daughter to respect others, she wouldn't be getting in his way. My chest heaved, fury boiling inside me. Emma whimpered softly against my shoulder, the sound twisting the knife of rage deeper into my heart. I wanted to scream, to let this woman know just how monstrous her son's actions were. But something in her expression stopped me. A flicker. Not guilt, not shame, something else. A kind of smug confidence, as though she knew something I didn't, and in that moment, I realized this wouldn't be as simple as holding her son accountable. No, this Karen wasn't going to admit fault. She wasn't going to apologize. She was going to fight me every step of the way, but I wasn't going to back down. Not when it came to Emma. I adjusted Emma in my arms and locked eyes with the woman. You don't get to walk away from this. Not today. The smirk that spread across her lips chilled me to my core. Oh, sweetheart, she said, her tone almost pitying. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The playground seemed to shrink around us, the laughter of other children fading into silence. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stared at her, the weight of her words settling like a storm cloud over my head. No idea who I was dealing with. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a spoiled child or an entitled mother. This was the beginning of something much bigger, something I wasn't prepared for, and I had no choice but to face it. As Emma whimpered softly in my arms, I made a silent vow. I would protect her at any cost. But little did I know, the battle that had just begun would uncover secrets about this woman and her son that would change everything. I thought I knew about this town, and about justice. Because when I finally found out who her mother really was, the entire game changed. I drove to the hospital with one hand gripping the wheel and the other holding Emma's small, trembling hand. Every red light felt like a personal attack, every second an eternity. Her head rested against the seat, her eyelids fluttering. The swelling on her forehead made my stomach churn. When we finally pulled into the emergency bay, I leapt out, scooped her into my arms, and ran inside. Please, my daughter, she hit her head. I stammered to the nurse at the desk. They moved quickly, whisking us into a room. Bright lights, beeping machines, the smell of antiseptic. I held my breath as the doctor examined her, shining a small flashlight into her eyes. She's stable, he said finally, his tone cautious. Looks like a mild concussion. We'll need to monitor her closely, run some scans, and keep her for observation overnight. I exhaled shakily, tears burning my eyes. Relief washed over me, but so did rage. My little girl was hurt. And it hadn't been an accident, it had been intentional. As I stroked Emma's hair, I made a silent vow. This wasn't going to be brushed aside. That boy Jacob and his mother weren't going to walk away from this like nothing had happened. Picked up my phone and called the police. An officer arrived less than an hour later, notebook in hand. His name was Officer Ramirez, young, polite, the kind of cop who looked like he still believed in doing things by the book. I told him everything, what Jacob did, what he said, how Karen dismissed it. He nodded, jotting it all down. We'll file this report and take it from there. With a head injury involved, this won't be ignored. For the first time that day, I felt a sliver of hope, but that hope didn't last long, because not even 20 minutes later, the hospital room door swung open again, and in walked Karen. She wasn't alone. A man in a tailored gray suit followed her, a lawyer, judging by the briefcase and the icy confidence in his eyes. Karen's sunglasses dangled from her manicured fingers as she swept into the room like she owned it. There's been a misunderstanding, she announced, her voice slicing through the air. My son would never intentionally hurt another child. My hands clenched into fists. I saw him shove her head into the ground. Her lawyer stepped forward smoothly. "Ma'am, I advise you to watch your words. False accusations against a minor can have serious legal consequences." My jaw dropped. False accusations? My daughter is lying in this bed with a concussion. Karen shrugged, her expression dripping with mock sympathy. Kid's roughhouse. Maybe she tripped. Maybe she slipped. You can't blame Jacob just because your daughter wasn't paying attention. Officer Ramirez cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I've already taken the statement. We'll be filing a report." "No, you won't." The words came from Karen's lawyer, calm but firm, like the crack of a gavel. He handed Ramirez a folded sheet of paper. The officer glanced at it, and his face paled. "This is being handled privately," the lawyer continued. "There's no need to escalate it further. I trust we're clear?" My pulse pounded. Handled privately? He assaulted my child. Karen leaned in closer, her perfume sickly sweet, her eyes sharp as glass. "You don't want to make this ugly, sweetheart. Trust me." For a second, I almost laughed. Ugly? My daughter lying in a hospital bed wasn't ugly enough? But then I saw it, the flicker in Officer Ramirez's eyes. The hesitation. The silent acknowledgement that he'd just been shut down. Karen's smirk widened. She turned to the lawyer. "Let's go. This poor woman has enough to worry about." They left as quickly as they'd come, heels clicking against the tile floor, leaving behind a silence heavy with menace. I turned to Ramirez, fury spilling out of me. "What was that? Why didn't you stop them?" His jaw tightened. He looked at me, then at Emma, then away. "I'll do what I can," he said quietly. But his voice lacked conviction, and that's when the dread settled in my chest. This wasn't just about a spoiled boy or an entitled mother. This was about power. The kind of power that bends the rules, that silences the truth, that makes good people look away. Later that night, after Emma finally drifted into a restless sleep, I stepped into the hallway to clear my head. My thoughts swirled in a storm of fear and anger. That's when I noticed a woman sitting on a bench across the hall. She was another parent I recognized from the short brown hair, tired eyes, clutching her purse like it held her last shred of courage. She glanced around nervously before leaning toward me. "You need to be careful," she whispered. I frowned. "Careful?" Her eyes darted toward the elevator where Karen and her lawyer had disappeared hours earlier. That woman. "Karen, you don't know who she is, do you?" I shook my head. The woman swallowed hard. "Her mother. She's on the city council. Has been for years. Money, connections, influence, you name it. People who cross her don't win." My skin prickled. "Are you saying she can just cover this up?" The woman's eyes darkened. "She already has. You're not the first." A chill ran down my spine. Before I could ask more, she stood quickly, muttered, "I'm sorry," and walked away, her heels clicking faster and faster until she vanished down the corridor. I stood there frozen, her words echoing in my mind. Not the first. Back in Emma's room, I sat beside her bed, stroking her hair as she whimpered softly in her sleep. My heart ached, but beneath the fear, something else sparked. A fire. Karen thought she could intimidate me. Her lawyer thought he could silence me. Her mother thought her power could protect them. But they didn't know me. I wasn't backing. Not when it came to Emma. As the hospital lights buzzed softly above me, I made another vow. I was going to find out everything about this family. Every secret, every lie, every shadow they used to hide behind. And when I uncovered the truth, not even Karen's powerful mother would be able to stop me. The morning after Emma's hospital stay, the world felt different. Not because the sun didn't shine, it did, streaming golden across our kitchen window as Emma nibbled at her toast. Not because the birds didn't sing, they did, chirping brightly as if nothing had changed. but because I couldn't stop hearing Corinne's voice in my head. You have no idea who you're dealing with. And the woman at the hospital, the way her eyes darted, the way her voice dropped when she said, she already has. You're not the first. I knew what she meant now. Corinne wasn't just a bully in designer sunglasses. She came from power. And that power had teeth. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just my imagination, fueled by exhaustion and anger. But that illusion shattered the moment I stepped outside with Emma. Mrs. Lewis, the neighbor across the street, was watering her flowers. Normally she would wave, ask how Emma was doing, maybe even come over to chat. But today? She froze when she saw us, her smile faltering. She gave a small, stiff nod before disappearing back inside. At the grocery store, I felt eyes on me. 2 women by the produce section whispered behind their hands, glancing my way, then quickly looking down at their baskets when I caught them. By the time I reached the checkout, I heard it. Is that her? The one going after Corinne's son? The cashier avoided my eyes, scanning items in silence. I walked out of that store with my head high, but inside I was boiling. Why were people acting like I was the problem? Emma was the one who got hurt. We were the victims here. And yet the whispers, the glances, the silence, it felt like I was already on trial. Later that afternoon, Lily's mom, my friend Rachel, dropped by with cookies for Emma. She lowered her voice once Emma went upstairs. Listen, she said, twisting her wedding ring nervously. You need to be careful. I almost laughed. You sound like that woman from the hospital. Rachel's face went pale. Then she's right. You don't know who you're up against. I leaned forward. Then tell me, who exactly am I up against? Rachel hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the window as if someone might be watching. Then she whispered, Corinne's mother is Evelyn Whitmore. She's been on the city council for 15 years. Her family owns half the businesses downtown. Developers, contractors, even the police chief owes her favors. She doesn't lose fights. The name hit me like a stone dropped in my chest. Evelyn Whitmore. I'd heard it before, in the news, on campaign signs, attached to charity events. Always polished, always smiling, always standing in the center of photographs like royalty. Rachel grabbed my hand. People don't say no to her. They don't even look at her the wrong way. Please. For Emma's sake, let this go. I pulled my hand back slowly. If I let it go, what happens the next time Jacob hurts someone? Rachel looked at me with tears in her eyes, her lips trembling as though she wanted to argue. But she didn't. She just shook her head, stood up, and left without another word. That night, after I tucked Emma into bed, I sat alone in the living room with only the hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. I pulled out my laptop and typed Evelyn Whitmore into the search bar. The results flooded the screen. Photos of Evelyn at ribbon cuttings, smiling with mayors and business leaders. Articles praising her charitable work, her dedication to the community. She looked like the picture of respectability. But then I scrolled deeper. Buried beneath the glowing headlines were comments. Whispers in online forums. Stories of construction projects approved despite protests. Small businesses shut down mysteriously. Families who moved away suddenly after disputes. Nothing concrete, but enough smoke to suggest fire. And then, in the quiet hum of the night, I heard a sound outside. Crrrk. Like paper sliding across glass. I froze, my heart thudding. Slowly, I crept to the front door and pulled it open. There, stuck under my windshield wiper, was a note. I glanced around. The street was empty, silent, but my pulse raced as I unfolded the paper. 3 words scrawled in bold black ink. Drop it now. My blood ran cold. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was a warning. The next day, I tried to go about life as normally as possible for Emma's sake. She was quiet, moving slower than usual, still nursing her sore head. I plastered on a smile, helped her with her homework, pretended everything was fine, but inside my mind was spinning. The note, the whispers. Rachel's warning. The way Officer Ramirez had folded under pressure, they wanted me scared. They wanted me silent, but I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. If anything, the warning only strengthened my resolve, because now I knew the truth. Karen and her son weren't untouchable. They only seemed that way because people were too afraid to push back. Well, I wasn't afraid anymore. That night, I stared at the note one last time before tucking it into a folder with Emma's hospital report. I whispered a promise into the quiet house. You picked the wrong mother to threaten. What I didn't know was that my fight had only just begun. And soon, I discovered that even the police, the very people meant to protect us, had already chosen sides. The morning after, finding that note on my windshield, I woke with a pit in my stomach. The kind of dread that doesn't fade with coffee or fresh air. But underneath it was something stronger, defiance. If Karen and her mother thought they could scare me into silence, they were wrong. Emma deserved justice. So, after dropping her off at school, kissing her forehead and telling her everything would be fine, drove straight to the police station. The building was small, squat brick, the kind of place that smelled like stale coffee and paperwork. A bored receptionist sat behind the front desk, clicking her pen and barely looking up as I approached. I'm here to follow up on a police report, I said firmly. Incident at the park yesterday. My daughter, Emma. Officer Ramirez took the statement. The receptionist blinked, then turned to her computer. Her nails clicked against the keyboard. She squinted at the screen, scrolled, frowned. What was the date again? Yesterday, I repeated, my pulse quickening. She typed again, chewing on her lip. Then she looked up at me with a puzzled expression. I don't see any record of that report. My stomach dropped. What do you mean you don't see it? He was here. He wrote everything down. Sorry, ma'am, she shrugged. It's not in the system. That's impossible, I snapped, louder than I meant to. A few officers across the room looked up from their desks. Check again. His name was Ramirez. The receptionist sighed, typed, and then shook her head. No report. Maybe it hasn't been filed yet? Not filed yet? My voice was sharp now. A child ended up in the hospital with a concussion. You're telling me he didn't bother to file it? Before she could respond, a voice came from behind me. Calm, smooth, too smooth. Can I help you? I turned to see a man in uniform, older, silver at the temples, with eyes that measured every move you made. His nameplate read Chief Dalton. Yes, I said, my voice trembling with restrained anger. I'm looking for the report Officer Ramirez filed about my daughter's assault. Dalton studied me for a long moment, then offered a thin smile. Why don't you step into my office? His office smelled of leather and cigar smoke, the blinds half drawn. He gestured for me to sit, then lowered himself into his chair like a king settling onto his throne. I understand your daughter was injured yesterday, he said, steepling his fingers. Injured? I repeated, heat rising in my chest. She was shoved headfirst into concrete by a boy twice her size. Dalton tilted his head. Playground accidents can be traumatic. But children, they're resilient. I stared at him. That wasn't an accident. And I want to know why the report is missing. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. Sometimes, in sensitive cases, reports are delayed to ensure accuracy. Delayed? Or buried? I shot back. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Dalton leaned forward, his voice dropping. Mrs. Carter, he said, using my last name like a weapon, I know you're upset. Any mother would be. But you need to understand something. Making enemies in this town is unwise, My blood ran cold. Enemies? I'm asking for justice for my daughter, Dalton sighed, almost pityingly. Justice is a complicated word, especially when it involves the Whitmore family. There it was. The name, spoken aloud like a verdict. I stood, my hands shaking. So that's it? Evelyn Whitmore snaps her fingers, and my daughter's case disappears? Dalton's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. He just rose slowly, walked to the door, and opened it. This conversation is over. Go home. Take care of your daughter. Let this go. His meaning was clear. I walked out, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The eyes of every officer in the station seemed to follow me, silent, complicit. By the time I got to my car, my anger had crystallized into something sharper. If the police wouldn't protect my daughter, then I would. But as I reached for my keys, I noticed a figure leaning against a dark sedan in the parking lot. It was Officer Ramirez. He looked nervous, glancing around before motioning me over. I'm sorry, he said the moment I reached him. His voice was low, urgent. I filed the report. I swear I did. But this morning it was gone. Gone. I echoed, my chest tightening. He nodded, eyes darting nervously toward the station doors. Chief Dalton had it pulled. Said it was a sensitive matter. I can't fight him. Not with who's involved. I grabbed his arm. Then tell me the truth. Why is everyone so afraid of Evelyn Whitmore? Ramirez hesitated. Because she doesn't just sit on the council. She owns half the people in there. Promotions, favors, debt, you name it. She's untouchable. Then I'll make her touchable, I said, surprising even myself with the conviction in my voice. Ramirez's eyes widened. Be careful. They don't play fair. You're not the first to go up against them, and the others, they don't stick around. What do you mean? I demanded, but he shook his head. I've already said too much. He glanced back at the station, then slid into his car and drove off, leaving me standing in the parking lot with more questions than answers. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the hospital paperwork spread out before me. Emma was asleep upstairs, her gentle breathing drifting through the baby monitor. I traced my fingers over the words, head trauma, concussion, proof that what Jacob did was real. Proof that they couldn't just erase with a keystroke, but proof meant nothing if no one would act on it. For the first time, fear crept in not just for Emma, but for me. Because Ramirez's warning echoed in my head. The others don't stick around. I pushed the thought aside. I wasn't going anywhere. Not until they were exposed. As I gathered the papers into a folder, headlights swept across my living room wall. I froze. A black SUV idled outside my house, its engine rumbling in the night. It didn't move. Didn't drive away. Just sat there, watching. And that's when I realized Evelyn Whitmore already knew. I wasn't letting this go, and she was ready to make me pay. The black SUV stayed outside my house for nearly an hour. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe they were lost. Maybe they were waiting for someone. But deep down, I knew better. When the headlights finally flicked off and the vehicle pulled away, I locked every door and window in the house, double-checking them twice. Still, sleep refused to come. I sat in the dark, clutching a baseball bat, listening to every creak and shift of the house until the sky turned gray. By morning, I was exhausted but more determined than ever. If Evelyn Whitmore thought she could scare me into silence, she had picked the wrong mother. The next day at school drop-off, I noticed the stares. Parents whispering, glancing at me, then quickly looking away. Normally, I wouldn't have cared. But after last night, every glance felt heavier, more deliberate, and then I saw her. Karen, standing beside her black SUV, sunglasses perched on her head, her son Jacob slouched against the passenger door. She smirked when she saw me, as if we were sharing some private joke. Careful, she called across the parking lot, her voice syrupy sweet. Wouldn't want Emma tripping and hitting her head again. The blood rushed to my ears. I wanted to march across the lot and slap that smug grin right off her face. But Emma's small hand squeezed mine, grounding me. I forced myself to keep walking, jaw clenched, my silence speaking louder than any words. Behind me, I could still hear Karen's laugh echoing like nails on glass. Later that afternoon, after picking Emma up, I found a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. My pulse spiked instantly. I unfolded it with shaking hands. Drop it. Or lose more than just a report. No signature. No name. Just a message that chilled me to the bone. Emma looked up from the backseat, chewing on her hair the way she always did when she was nervous. Mom, what's wrong? I crumpled the note in my fist, forcing a smile. Nothing, sweetheart. Just trash. But my mind was racing. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was a threat. That evening, I called my sister, Melissa. She lived 2 towns over, far enough away to be out of Evelyn's shadow. You can't do this alone, Melissa said after I told her everything. She's powerful, yes, but she's not untouchable. You need allies. Allies? I laughed bitterly. Around here, everyone's too afraid to even make eye contact with me. Then go above her head, Melissa urged. State police, media, someone outside of this town. Her words sparked something inside me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been so focused on fighting Evelyn here, on her turf, that I hadn't considered going over her head. I ended the call with a plan forming in my mind, but plans have a way of unraveling. Before they're even set in motion, the very next morning, I found my mailbox hanging open, its contents scattered across the sidewalk. Bills, flyers, Emma's school newsletter all tossed like garbage, but there was something else too. A photograph dotted showed Emma walking home from school, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. The angle made it clear. Someone had followed her. Written across the bottom in thick black marker were 2 words, back off. My knees nearly gave out. I rushed into the house, slamming the door behind me. My hand shook so violently I could barely hold the photo. This wasn't about me anymore. They were going after my daughter. That was the moment my fear hardened into rage. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. I started by digging. Old newspaper articles, council meeting records, campaign finance reports. Evelyn Whitmore's name was everywhere. Donations, backroom deals, zoning approvals that conveniently benefited her friends. The more I read, the more I realized Melissa was right. Evelyn wasn't just feared, she was corrupt to her core. But one name kept coming up alongside hers, Judge Harris. He'd signed off on rulings that always seemed to tilt in Evelyn's favor. Land disputes, business licenses, even custody battles. Every time, Evelyn's allies won. If Evelyn was the spider at the center of the web, Judge Harris was one of the strands holding it all together. That night, while Emma slept upstairs, I pinned newspaper clippings and printed documents to the wall of my home office. It looked like something out of a detective drama, lines connecting Evelyn to Harris, Harris to Dalton, Dalton back to Evelyn, piece by piece. The picture became clearer. Evelyn's influence wasn't just strong. It was systemic. And yet, staring at that wall, I realized something else. The system was her armor. To beat her, I'd have to step outside it. I decided to take Melissa's advice. If the local police and judges were in Evelyn's pocket, I needed someone untouchable. The media, not the local paper, of course. They were already owned by Evelyn's cronies. But bigger outlets, ones that thrived on stories of corruption and scandal. I drafted an email, attaching photos of Emma's medical reports, a scanned copy of the threatening note, and a summary of everything I'd uncovered so far. My finger hovered over the send button, heart racing. Once I clicked, There would be no going back, but before I could send it, a loud crash shook the house. I bolted to the living room to find the front window shattered. Glass scattered across the floor. Lying among the shards was a brick. I picked it up, my hands trembling. Scrawled across it in the same thick black marker as the photograph were 3 words. Final warning. Stop. As I stood there, the brick heavy in my hand, I realized something chilling. They weren't just trying to scare me anymore. They were giving me a choice: surrender or face something far worse. And deep down, I knew the storm was only just beginning. The shattered glass still crunched beneath my slippers hours later. I hadn't cleaned it up. Couldn't. Every time I looked at it, rage boiled up inside me like lava threatening to erupt. They'd crossed a line. It wasn't about silencing me anymore. It wasn't even about control. This was war. Emma woke early that morning and padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, what happened?" I rushed forward, blocking her view of the broken window. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just an accident," she frowned, looking at the brick on the table. "Did someone throw that?" Her innocence twisted my heart. I brushed her hair back, forcing a smile. "Don't worry about it. Mommy's going to take care of everything." She looked at me for a long time, then whispered, "I believe you." Those 3 words lit a fire in me stronger than any fear. Evelyn Whitmore could manufacture. After dropping Emma off at school, I drove to a small cafe 2 towns over, the kind of place where no one knew my name and no one would whisper behind their coffee cups. Melissa was already waiting in a corner booth, a steaming mug in front of her. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said softly. "Haven't." I slid into the seat opposite her and pulled the brick from my bag, setting it on the table between us. "This was thrown through my window last night." Her face drained of color. "Oh my God, they're escalating," I nodded. "Which means I can't just play defense anymore. I need to hit back." Melissa leaned in. "How?" I took a deep breath. "By exposing Evelyn publicly. I've already started digging. She's tied to Judge Harris, Chief Dalton, half the council. If I can connect the dots, if I can show the world what she's built, then maybe someone outside this rotten town will finally listen." Melissa studied me, her brow furrowed. "That's dangerous. So is staying quiet." I met her gaze, my voice steady. "They came after Emma. I won't let them think they can scare us into silence." That night, I stayed up late at the kitchen table, laptop glowing in the dark. My office wall was already plastered with clippings and notes, but now I was turning them into something more. A timeline. Dates, names, transactions. Council votes that benefited Evelyn's companies. Court rulings that aligned perfectly with her investments. Police cases that vanished into thin air whenever her family was involved. The deeper I went, the more the pattern became undeniable. Evelyn didn't just have influence. She ran this town like a puppet master, pulling every string, but I needed proof strong, enough to pierce the bubble of fear she'd created. That's when I remembered something Officer Ramirez had said in the station parking lot. "You're not the first to go up against them. If others had tried, maybe they'd left behind evidence. Maybe they had stories that could back mine up." The next day, I tracked down one of those stories. Her name was Linda Parks, a former city clerk who'd mysteriously resigned 5 years ago. I found her working at a bookstore on the edge of town, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes wary. At first, she denied everything. "I don't know what you're talking about. I just wanted a quieter life." But when I showed her the photo of Emma with "back off" scrawled across it, her face crumpled. "They threatened my kids too," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's why I left. I didn't have the strength to fight them." "Then help me," I urged, gripping her hand. "I do. I won't stop until Evelyn is exposed. But I can't do it alone." Linda hesitated, then finally nodded. "I kept copies. Documents Evelyn wanted destroyed. I couldn't bring myself to burn them. Hope sparked in my chest. If I give them to you, Linda continued, you have to promise me one thing. Don't stop halfway. Don't let her scare you off. I promise, I said without hesitation. She led me to the back of the store, unlocked a battered filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were financial records, council transcripts, and most damning of all, a letter from Judge Harris thanking Evelyn for her continued support in ensuring the right outcomes. Smoking gun. I drove home clutching that folder like it was made of gold. For the first time, I felt like I had real power in this fight. Proof Evelyn couldn't erase. Proof no missing police report could bury. But power paints a target. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My front door was open. I jumped out of the car, folder clutched to my chest. Emma? I shouted, heart hammering. She wasn't supposed to be home. Melissa had picked her up for a sleepover. But panic drowned out logic as I ran inside. The living room was trashed. Cushions slashed open, drawers yanked out, papers scattered across the floor. They'd been searching for something. For this. I clutched the folder tighter, backing slowly toward the door. That's when I heard it. A floorboard creaked upstairs. I froze. Someone was still in the house. I crept toward the door, every nerve in my body screaming to run. But before I could reach it, a shadow moved at the top of the stairs. A man stood there, his face obscured by a baseball cap, his hand resting casually on the railing. And in that moment, I realized Evelyn hadn't just sent warnings anymore. She'd sent someone to finish the job. The figure at the top of the stairs didn't move. Neither did I. For a long, suffocating moment, we stared at each other, the intruder hidden in shadow, me frozen in the doorway, the folder of evidence clutched so tightly in my arms my knuckles turned white. Then, slowly, he started down the stairs. Step by step, deliberate, controlled, like a predator closing in on its prey. Who are you? I demanded, my voice sharper than I felt inside. He didn't answer. The silence was worse than any threat. My heart pounded in my ears as my eyes darted around the room. The baseball bat I'd left by the couch last night was gone. He must have taken it. I backed toward the front door, trying to buy time. You're making a mistake. Whatever Evelyn promised you, it's not worth this. Still nothing. When he reached the last step, the light from the broken window finally revealed his face. Rough, scarred, with eyes like cold steel. He wasn't some petty thug. He was professional. And professionals don't leave witnesses. Adrenaline surged through me. I bolted for the door, but he was faster. A hand clamped around my arm, yanking me back so hard I stumbled. The folder nearly slipped from my grasp, but I held on like my life depended on it, because it did. Give it to me, he growled, his voice low and gravelly. Over my dead body, I spat, his lips curled into the faintest smile. That can be arranged. I kicked out blindly, my foot connecting with his shin. He grunted, loosening his grip just enough for me to wrench free. I sprinted into the kitchen, my mind racing. Weapons. I needed a weapon. My hand scrambled through drawers until they closed around the handle of a knife. I spun just as he entered, bat in hand, his steps calm, measured. You don't want to do this, he said. Neither do you, I shot back, brandishing the knife with shaking hands. For a moment, we circled each other, predator and prey blurring together. Then he lunged. The world exploded into chaos. I slashed wildly, the knife grazing his arm. He hissed in pain but didn't stop, swinging the bat in a brutal arc. The air cracked as it missed my head by inches, splintering the cabinet door behind me. I ducked, shoved the kitchen table between us, and ran for the back door. My fingers fumbled at the lock, but before I could twist it open, he yanked me back by the hair. I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat raw and desperate. The knife slipped from my hand, clattering across the floor. The folder tumbled too, papers spilling like fallen leaves. His eyes flicked toward it. That split-second distraction was all I needed. I drove my elbow into his ribs with everything I had. He staggered, cursing. I snatched the folder, bolted into the laundry room, and slammed the door behind me. No lock. No time. I shoved the washing machine against it, my muscles screaming as his fists pounded from the other side. "Open the door!" he bellowed. I pressed my back against the machine, chest heaving. Fink. Fink. My gaze shot to the small window above the dryer, barely wide enough for me to squeeze through. It would have to do. I shoved the folder through first, then hauled myself up, scraping my arms raw against the frame. The pounding grew louder, the door trembling on its hinges. "Too slow," he snarled. With one final heave, I tumbled onto the grass outside, gasping for air. I grabbed the folder, scrambled to my feet, and sprinted into the night. Behind me, the door finally gave way. His shadow loomed in the window, but I didn't look back, not once. I didn't stop running until I reached the end of the block, lungs burning, legs shaking. A porch light flicked on as a neighbor peeked out. I waved frantically. "Call the police. Someone's in my house." But even as the words left my mouth, dread coiled in my gut. The police. Chief Dalton's police. Would they even come? And if they did, would they protect me or hand me over to Evelyn? Still, the neighbor called. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights bathed the street. 2 officers approached, guns drawn, storming my house. I waited on the curb, clutching the folder to my chest, praying. Minutes passed. Then one officer emerged, shaking his head. "No one's inside." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible." "He was there. He tried to kill me." "House is clear," the officer repeated flatly. I stared at him, realization dawning like ice water pouring over me. They weren't going to help me. Maybe they never even looked. Chief Dalton himself arrived soon after, his expression calm, almost smug. "Break in, Mrs. Carter?" he asked, voice dripping with false concern. "You know damn well it wasn't just a break-in," I snapped, my voice hoarse. "One of Evelyn's thugs was inside my house. He tried to take this." I held up the folder. Dalton's eyes flicked to it, then back to me. "Be careful with accusations. You wouldn't want to complicate things further." "Complicate things?" I laughed bitterly. "She sent someone to kill me." He sighed, signaling to his men. "Searched the house again, thoroughly. But when they returned, they carried something that made my blood run cold. The knife. My knife. In a plastic evidence bag. Dalton studied it before looking at me. "Interesting. Fresh blood on the blade." I shook my head furiously. "That's his blood." I cut him. But Dalton's smile widened. "Or maybe it's yours. Maybe you staged this whole scene." The officers closed in on me, cuffs glinting in the streetlight, and that's when it hit me. Evelyn hadn't just sent someone to kill me. She'd set the stage to make me look like the criminal, and the trap was closing fast. Cold steel bit into my wrists as the cuffs snapped shut. I twisted, shouting, "You can't do this. I'm the victim here." But Dalton's men didn't hesitate. They marched me toward the squad car like I was the danger, like I hadn't just fought for my life in my own kitchen. The neighbors watched from their porches, whispers carrying in the night. I could feel their eyes on me. Some curious, some pitying. Most relieved it wasn't them. When the car door slammed shut, it felt like the world itself was sealing against me. The ride to the station was silent except for the crackle of the radio. My heart pounded, my mind screaming at the injustice. They were flipping the narrative, twisting it into Evelyn's story. I was the unstable mother, the violent one, the liar. By the time we arrived, My anger had hardened into something colder. Resolved. They could lock me up, but they couldn't erase the truth. Not this time. They booked me like a criminal. Mugshot, fingerprints, personal belongings shoved into a plastic bag. The female officer who frisked me wouldn't even meet my eyes. Then came the cell. Gray walls. Steel bench. A toilet in the corner with no privacy. The smell of bleach barely covering the stench of despair. The door clanged shut, echoing like a death sentence. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a tremor of doubt. What if Evelyn really was untouchable? What if I never got out? But then I thought of Emma. Her small hand squeezing mine at the school parking lot. Her whisper, "I believe you." That memory burned through the fear. I couldn't let her down. Now. Not ever. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time bent strangely in that cell. Finally, footsteps echoed in the corridor. The bars rattled, and Chief Dalton himself appeared, holding a clipboard. He looked at me like a cat studying a cornered mouse. "Mrs. Carter," he said smoothly, "you've made quite the mess." "You framed me," I snapped. "You know damn well I'm telling the truth," Dalton chuckled. "Truth is a matter of perspective. And right now, the perspective is that you attacked an intruder in your home. That knife has your prints all over it. Blood, too. It's his blood." I shouted, "Where is he? Why aren't you looking for him?" "Because," Dalton said, leaning closer, "there is no him, just your word against ours. And between you and me, your word doesn't carry much weight in this town." My fists clenched so hard my nails cut into my palms. "What do you want from me?" His smile was reptilian. "Simple. Drop this crusade against the Whitmores. Publicly admit you overreacted. Say the incident with your daughter was a misunderstanding, and all of this goes away." I stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to betray my own daughter?" "Think of it as protecting her," Dalton replied smoothly. "Because if you don't, things could get harder. For both of you." When he finally walked away, leaving me trembling in the cell, I knew I was at a crossroads. Give in. And Emma would grow up safe, but she'd also grow up in a world where power crushed truth. Fight back. And I risked losing her forever. But the choice was already made. I would never bow to Evelyn Whitmore. Late that night, the cell door creaked open again. But it wasn't Dalton. It was Officer Ramirez. He glanced nervously over his shoulder before stepping inside. "Keep your voice down," he whispered. I stood, hope flaring. "Please tell me you believe me." "I do," he said quickly. "I've seen enough to know you're telling the truth. But you're in serious danger. Dalton's building a case against you. Assault with a deadly weapon. Maybe even attempted murder." My knees nearly buckled. "Murder? Of who?" "Of no one," Ramirez said bitterly. "But that won't matter. They just need the story to stick long enough to bury you." I swallowed hard. "Then help me." "Help me expose them." Ramirez hesitated, torn. "I can't, not openly. If Dalton finds out, I'm finished. But—" He glanced at the folder I still clutched protectively. "What's in there might be enough to get outside attention. If you can get it out, they'll confiscate it when they process me," I whispered. "Then hide it," Ramirez urged. "Tonight. Before Dalton comes back." He pressed something into my hand, a tiny key. "What's this?" I asked. "A storage locker. Outside town. My insurance policy. If something happens to me, everything I've collected on the Whitmores is in there. Use it." Before I could thank him, he slipped out, leaving me with the key burning in my palm. Sleep was impossible. My mind raced with possibilities, fears, and fragile threads of hope. Morning came too soon. Guards arrived, unlocking the cell, escorting me to an interrogation room. Dalton was waiting, a file already open on the table. His smile was sharp as glass. Ready to cooperate? He asked. I met his gaze steady. Never. His smile faltered. Just for a second. Then he slid the file toward me. Inside were photographs, me holding the knife, me running from the house, me clutching the folder like stolen loot. Interesting images, aren't they? Dalton drawled. The court will love them. My stomach twisted. Those are doctored. Or maybe, he countered, you're desperate, unstable, dangerous. That's the story anyway. I forced myself not to break. The truth will come out. Dalton leaned back, his eyes glinting. Not before it buries you. As he spoke, the door opened, and in walked Karen. Perfect hair. Perfect smile. Her son Jacob trailing behind her, feigning innocence. Dalton stood to greet her like royalty. Thank you for coming. I thought it was time you gave your statement. And in that moment, I realized Karen wasn't just Evelyn's pawn. She was ready to stand as my executioner. The fluorescent lights in the interrogation room buzzed faintly, a cold, sterile hum that cut through the silence. Karen sat across from me, her designer handbag perched neatly on the table like a badge of superiority. Jacob slouched beside her, his expression carefully crafted into wide-eyed innocence. Chief Dalton folded his arms, grinning like the cat who'd cornered the mouse. Mrs. Whitmore, he said smoothly, please tell us what happened that night. Karen's lips curved into a smile so polished it made my stomach churn. Well, she began, her voice dripping with rehearsed concern. I was at home with Jacob when we heard a commotion outside. My poor son, curious as ever, went to check. Next thing I knew, Mrs. Carter here was screaming, wielding a knife, and lunging at him. I slammed my fists on the table. That's a lie. Dalton's gaze snapped to me. Sit down, Mrs. Carter. You'll have your turn. But I didn't sit. She's twisting it. Jacob broke into my house. He attacked me. He's the reason my daughter is in therapy. Karen gasped theatrically, placing a hand on her chest. Do you hear this? She's unstable. She's projecting her problems onto my son. Jacob sniffled, playing his part. I just wanted to help, sir. I saw her drop papers outside, and when I tried to give them back, she grabbed a knife. The performance was flawless. Too flawless. Dalton leaned back, clearly enjoying the show. Compelling testimony. I locked eyes with Karen. You're protecting him. Covering for Evelyn. But this time, you won't win. Karen's smile didn't waver. Oh, darling, I already have. Hours blurred as the questioning dragged on. They twisted my every word. Every attempt to explain was labeled as paranoia, hysteria, desperation. Dalton wrote notes like a judge jotting down guilty verdicts. At one point, Karen pulled a tissue from her bag, dabbing at imaginary tears. I just don't understand why she hates us so much. We've tried to be neighborly, and this is how she repays us, attacking my child? I wanted to scream, to shake her until the mask cracked. But I forced myself to stay still, silent, because I realized something. Karen was overplaying her hand, her theatrics, her crocodile tears. They weren't for me. They were for anyone watching. And sure enough, through the two-way glass, I caught the faintest movement. A shadow. Someone observing. Was it Ramirez? Another officer? Or someone higher up? Hope sparked, fragile but alive. When the questioning finally ended, Dalton escorted Karen and Jacob out with exaggerated courtesy. She left me with one last sugary smile. Good luck, dear. You'll need it. The door shut behind her, and silence crashed down. Dalton leaned across the table, his voice low. You should take the deal while you can. Evelyn won't be so forgiving after today. I'll never take it, I spat. Not from you, not from her, not from anyone. His eyes narrowed, the mask slipping. Then may God help you. He stood and walked out, leaving me alone. That night in my cell, sleep wouldn't come. Karen's lies replayed in my head like poison on a loop, but something else nagged at me, the shadow behind the glass. Someone had seen Karen's performance. Maybe, just maybe, they hadn't bought it. The next morning, the guards came again. But this time, it wasn't Dalton waiting. It was Ramirez. He pressed a finger to his lips as they led me into the room. Once the door shut, he leaned close. "You were right," he whispered urgently. "Karen's story doesn't add up." She slipped. My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" He slid a piece of paper across the table. During her testimony, she said she was home the whole time. But security cameras show her SUV leaving the neighborhood 15 minutes before you called. 911. And get this, she was gone for nearly an hour. I froze. She wasn't home? Exactly. Which means Jacob wasn't with her the whole time either. And if he wasn't with her, then he was in my house, I finished, fury and vindication colliding in my chest. Ramirez nodded. "It's not enough yet, but it's a crack in this story. A big one. If we can connect it to Evelyn." The door burst open. Dalton stormed in, eyes blazing. "What the hell is this?" Ramirez shot to his feet, hiding the paper behind his back. "Just routine follow-up, Chief," he said quickly. Dalton's glare cut through the room. "Step outside, now." Ramirez hesitated, then obeyed, shooting me a fleeting glance. "A promise." When the door slammed shut, Dalton turned to me. "You think you're clever, don't you?" His voice was venom. "Trying to turn my men against me. Planting seeds." I met his gaze unflinching. "The truth doesn't need planting. It grows on its own." His fist slammed onto the table, making me flinch despite myself. "If you think one rookie's doubts will save you, you're dumber than I thought." He leaned close, his breath hot and acrid. "You're done, Mrs. Carter. Tomorrow morning you'll be arraigned. And when the judge sees what I've prepared, you'll never see your daughter again." Before I could respond, the intercom crackled to life. "Chief Dalton," a voice said, "you're needed in the lobby. Now." He cursed under his breath and stormed out. Moments later, Ramirez slipped back in, face pale but eyes burning with urgency. "You need to hear this," he whispered. "The person in the lobby asking for you, it's Evelyn herself, and she hadn't come alone." The station lobby buzzed with tension as the doors slid open. Evelyn. Whitmore entered like a storm dressed in silk. Every eye followed her. Officers straightened their backs. Clerks froze mid-task, and even Dalton's smug confidence flickered at her arrival. She wasn't alone. Two men in immaculate suits flanked her, faces hard, carrying briefcases that screamed power and intimidation. Her heels clicked against the tiled floor as if marking the rhythm of my downfall. "Where is she?" Evelyn demanded, her voice a blade wrapped in velvet. Dalton hurried forward, bowing his head slightly. "In interrogation." "We've got her cornered just as you wanted." Her smile was ice. "Good. Then let's finish this." Minutes later, they dragged me back into the interrogation room. Evelyn stood at the head of the table like a queen overseeing her subject. Karen lingered in the corner, smirking. Jacob glued to her side. "You've caused me quite the headache," Evelyn said smoothly, her eyes locking on mine. "But it ends tonight," I sat, forcing myself not to show fear. "You can silence me, Evelyn, but you can't silence the truth." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "The truth is whatever I say it is. And in this town, my word is law." Her arrogance was suffocating. But as she spoke, Ramirez slipped quietly into the room, holding a small recorder. He positioned himself behind Dalton, his eyes meeting mine for a split second. Hope flickered. Dalton spread a stack of papers across the table. These are sworn statements, witnesses, photos, everything, proving you assaulted Jacob and attempted to conceal evidence. I stared at the lies printed in black ink. Then, without breaking eye contact with Evelyn, I asked softly, "Did you forget about the cameras?" For the first time, Evelyn blinked. "What cameras?" she asked. "The ones that caught Karen leaving the neighborhood when she swore she was home," I replied, voice steady. "The ones that showed Jacob wasn't with her. The ones proving your perfect story is nothing but rot." Dalton's jaw tightened. Evelyn's smile faltered, and Ramirez chose that moment to hit play on the recorder. Evelyn's voice filled the room, clear as crystal. "The truth is whatever I say it is. And in this town, my word is law." The blood drained from Dalton's face. Karen's smirk vanished. The silence was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Dalton lunged for the recorder, but Ramirez was quicker, shoving it into his pocket and stepping back. "Not today, Chief," Evelyn snapped at her lawyers. "Do something." But the damage was already done. Officers had gathered at the door, drawn by the commotion, and they'd heard enough. Whispers spread like wildfire. "She admitted it. She's guilty. The Whitmores aren't untouchable after all." For the first time, Evelyn's composure cracked. Her eyes burned with fury as she pointed at me. "This isn't over. You think a tape will destroy me? I built this town. I own this town." But her voice shook, betraying the fear beneath the rage. I rose slowly, shackles clinking but my spine straight as steel. "No, Evelyn. You owned it." Past tense. But tonight, the town saw the real you. In the hours that followed, everything unraveled. Dalton was stripped of his badge. Karen's lies collapsed under scrutiny. Jacob's innocence exposed as a mask for cruelty. Evelyn's empire began to crumble as the recording spread beyond the station walls. For the first time, power slipped from her manicured hands, and for the first time, I felt free. When I walked out of that station, Emma was waiting. She ran into my arms, holding me like she'd never let go. "Mom," she whispered, tears streaming. "I knew you'd win." I kissed her forehead, voice breaking. We won together. The night air smelled different, cleaner, sharper, alive with possibility. Evelyn Whitmore might still fight, might still claw to keep her crown, but the truth had cut deep, and the truth always bleeds through. If this story gripped you, if you felt the tension, the injustice, and the final twist, then you're in the right place. List and Host Stories is where everyday battles become unforgettable tales. Don't forget to like this video if you stood with the mother's fight for truth. Subscribe to List and Host Stories for more gripping HOA, Karen, and real-life inspired drama stories. And hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story that will leave you speechless. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We tell the ones you'll never forget.